So I was just telling everyone before I pass the mic to Rory and we talk about what's going on today. CSEP has a new and improved website. You can see here, and you can see. I always just Google it because I don't think that the web address is. It's not something like csepscalingUp.org. We don't have that anymore. It's not as easy to find. It's csep.spg.unc.edu. So you can use that, or you can just say CSEP, and I use like CSEP NERN or some combination of that and Google it. But I wanted to make sure you were aware of this. They have their briefs in one place now. They have white papers. They have tools for technical assistance. You can find out about how they provide technical assistance and also request TA here. It talks about who their intensive TA states are. They're also doing superintendent preparation work, and they're working with charters. This is about their capacity assessment support, and then how they work with OSEP TA providers. You can get to the Active Implementation Hub, also known as the AI Hub from here. And it's easier to get back and forth as well. And of course, the Active Implementation Hub has been recently modified. So let me know if you have questions, or if you have ideas about how they can improve it. They're very open to improving it, learning from your user experience. But I want to make sure I shared that. The other thing I wanted to share real quickly was that Marcy Rock, who many of you know of because she's presented before to the SIG Network, or she may have worked with you, and she's helped us quite a bit with technology-based coaching. So Bug and Ear has been something that she's used quite a bit and has been working in tandem with the North Carolina SIDIG for a while. She just won the TED Award, so Teacher Education Division of CEC. The TED Award, I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I make sure I say the right, if anyone's, oh, here it is. The TED Award, TED Distinguished Service Award. So North Carolina wanted to give her a shout out. She has a long history of providing service to the profession of the special education teacher preparation program. And with that, I'm going to lead into today's, yay, Dr. Rock. I'm going to lead into today's topic. And Rory, if you want to share your screen, I'll just get everyone familiar again with why we're here. So Rory,
sure.
yeah. Rory Fitzpatrick was our keynote at the SPDIG National Meeting. We talked about systems alignment in that keynote, and she made it a real working session where she was describing some of the key, well, she was combining the improvement science and strategies with that with considerations for systems alignment and having teams work through that themselves. And then, of course, taking those worksheets home because they didn't get to complete all the work and there were next steps, and back at their state, bringing in other team members and continuing the conversation. How do you take the SPDIG work and consider the other things going on in your state and think about where do they need to come together? Where can your other initiatives in the state build on the SPDIG, the SPDIG build on them? What are the connections that you can make to be more efficient and to improve your effectiveness? And so she helps us think through those things. Today we have some teams that are ready to talk about their work, and we're open to hearing about all your efforts. We sent you home some questions to think about, and I emailed you the homework to prepare for today's session. And so I'm going to turn it over to Rory, and I'll step in various times when it'll be helpful. So thank you so much, Rory, for being with us again.
Yeah, no, awesome. Hi, everybody. Thanks again for the invitation. Excuse me, I'm I'm trying to get over a cold, so I'll do my best to not make that uncomfortable for all of us, but I'll appreciate your indulgence as I sort of cough and maintain a little bit. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you a few weeks ago in DC. I was thinking, was it a month ago? And I don't even think it was quite a month, right? We've all been super busy.
Oh.
So thank you again for that opportunity. And just what I have up here on the screen is just what was discussed that day at the presentation at your conference, and then what went out electronically to you all. So on one side of the screen, it's just a slide view, slide sorter view of the presentation that we used, the PowerPoint, to walk through the concepts. And then on the other side is just the worksheets that you all used to process in your teams that day. excuse me, what Jennifer and I talked about was not a presentation today, so I don't have new information to present to you, as she and I agreed to, and as I think was shared in the message that she sent out a few weeks ago. Really, this is an opportunity to dig into questions as you guys have been thinking more about this. If it's useful to share what you guys have been doing to help help others think through their own problems of practice and improvement strategies based upon the learnings of others. So I don't have any content to present. I'm just really here kind of as the open door session and a guest and learner among this community of learners.
Great, thank you, Rory. And I think Arkansas has, I'm lucky enough to have some states who were willing to talk about what they have done with the information since they've gotten back to their states and what they're thinking about doing in the future. And so I wanted to first call on Tia Frazier from Arkansas. And Tia, did you want to share your screen for that?
Yes, I think that might be the easiest thing. Let me get that pulled up. So you're not looking at anything pretty. Again, we knew that there was not tons of pressure to create a presentation. Thank you for that. Dr. Jeff Adams should also be on the call today. He is our ESSIP coordinator for the state. And so kind of what you're going to see is just sort of our thinking. Part of it's notes that we took while we were at the conference and had some time to work together. We always appreciate some time to work together and process the learning as we're learning. So thank you for that. Getting some feedback, but
Sorry,
it's not
Tia,
me. It's
somebody
okay.
just got on the
It's fine.
computer. Not you.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. So we kind of first just started by using the worksheets that Rory presented, to us the day that we were all together, and we kind of listed out who else within the agency might be concerned about the work or have some connections to our work within our ESSIP and our SPDIG. And we just listed those teammates here on the screen. Some of them were new that we hadn't actually thought of before, or that maybe we had thought of over the last 9 to 10 months, and we just hadn't been purposeful about maybe sending a formal invitation to them to be part of some of our conversations. And then we also listed what initiatives needed to be aligned, and you can see that there are a lot of them. And so I'll kind of list some things that are going on in the state of Arkansas right now. So what we've listed are a ton of acronyms because that's what we're really good at, right? So I will just kind of go through and tell you what they are. So the first one says HRS, that's High Reliability Schools. Many of you recall some of the Arkansas work from our systems alignment community of practice that we have been involved in for the last 3 years. And get to still be a part of, yay. And we had a cross-unit team, and in that cross-unit team, we had worked on some initiative alignment, and we were trying to attach all of our work to a framework. And so for a couple of years, we did some work using the 4 domains of rapid school turnaround and brought in Dr. Carlos McCauley and part of the team from Industar or ADI into some of those conversations. And the stakeholders in the state of Arkansas didn't like a lot of the language that was embedded into the framework because it was based on school turnaround principles and seemed very like they just weren't ready for the whole improvement, feeling as if they were failing in order to move forward. It just so happens that leadership made the decision to change to a different framework right when Sam and Carlos revised all of that, because that was sort of some of the common feedback they were getting from around the country. And so when we, leadership made the decision to sort of change frameworks and look at something else, they chose Marzano's work for high reliability schools. It all aligns, and a lot of it's based on some of the same research, but that's kind of one of the big hitters that we're trying to sort of plug everything into. So high reliability schools becomes the framework that we attach all services to. We are a large solution tree state, so professional learning communities would be the next big piece that we need to make sure is aligned to the work. Focusing on core instruction and ensuring that there is a safe and collaborative space in order to have conversations regarding student outcomes, effective teaching, and effective learning. And then within that would be response to intervention, RISE, which is a state reading initiative based on the science of reading. QUEST is a math initiative, and then More recently, we have been involved in some work around high leverage practices. And then, of course, many of the rest of these things are already connected to our SPDIG work, PBIS, equity, family community engagement, alternative learning, and Guide for Life, which is a guide that the state of Arkansas personal competencies team has created based on the work of CASEL. And it actually outlines the essentials based on grade span that students should know and be able to do. And it's really soft skills. And all of that goes along with our behavior support. So tons of things we're trying to align, right? And so when you do that, you have to be constantly involved in conversations. And Roy gave us this activity while we were there to try to create like this anchor statement in order to really move the work forward. And somehow Dr. Adams was able to just like ramble off this statement that made perfect sense. And so that's what you see here. He did a great job. And it says, in order to be a high reliability school, districts have to engage collaboratively in a systemic process to embed evidence-based practices, high leverage practices to meet the needs of all learners through a tiered system of support. We felt like that really took the work, the focus off just one team, and instead really framed all the work of being in a multi-tiered system and attaches it to high reliability schools. And I'm going to pause so that Dr. Adams can maybe add any information he wants to there.
Sure. Tia articulated well what we've been trying to do, and I know that this is likely the result of some of you all are experiencing similar things in your states where you may shift frameworks or you may shift something at the agency level that requires you to then make sure that you're aligning the work that you have ongoing to the new framework or system that your agency has selected. And that's really what we've spent a good 12 to 15 months doing, is taking these frameworks that are considered to be the primary initiatives of our state with high reliability schools, professional learning communities, and then to make sure that those are reflected in our work, to make sure that at the highest level our work is legitimized, and to make sure that everyone understands what it is that we're doing. And so the high reliability schools piece is the foundational piece. But then when you look at this statement, this anchor statement on engaging collaboratively in a systemic process, that would be the professional learning community piece. And then we felt that the other work was umbrellaed under evidence-based or high leverage practices, and that we want to have that reflected through that system of tiers. So that's really what we have been living. And while we were at the SPDIG national meeting, and we were going through that activity, that is really what finally coalesced in the thinking was, yes, this is exactly what we've been trying to do and working to do. And hopefully we captured that in this statement.
Thank you, Jeff. So the other things that you'll see here are just some visuals or PowerPoints that we felt like we needed to bring to the larger team. So the very first thing I showed you is that who else is worried about the work or should be invited to the table in order to have conversations to help us make decisions. We feel like that some of those team members need to be brought in to the state capacity assessment. And in the past, we've had a really large group as part of that state capacity assessment process. And we've really taken about half a day in order to go through that process, really setting the tone of reflecting on what all we've completed in the past year and what are the measurable outcomes. And then really just going through the facilitation of the assessment for about 2 hours, and then prioritizing and making some next steps in order to create an action plan at a later time. So we want to make that day a little more than 4 hours. Our goal is to make it a full day. And we've sketched out sort of the outline of what we would like that day to look like, and some of the things that we would like to use in order to inform the entire team about where the work has been. So that's what you see here. And I think John's going to try to link it somewhere. We were having a difficult time getting email back and forth to one another, because I sent a Google link, and we'll get that worked out for you guys so that you can have this if you want to look at any of it. You could always email Jeff or I also. We're glad to share it with you. So you'll see the value creation framework model, which is what was the foundation of helping us frame the impacts of our work when we originally worked on a formal cross-unit team. The way that we currently structure our work as far as cross-divisional work goes in the state of Arkansas right now is through our strategic performance management of the entire state educational agency. So before, we were meeting as a separate team saying, okay, here is the small group of people in a cross-unit team, and our quick chronology of engagement from leading by convening, as well as the work around our value creation model, really showed us that that team was ready to expand outside of a smaller team and could be embedded within the entire strategic performance management team within the entire state agency. And we meet monthly. We call it the first Friday across the entire agency to talk about what are the 5 goals and how are they connected to our mission and vision of the SEA, and then what are the strategies, milestones, and action steps that are connected to that work. There's really a great space that's very IndaStar-like, if you'll, kind of give me that liberty there, because Sam Redding did actually help us create that work originally, and we have some partners that continue to support that work, and ADI is one of them. The next thing that you'll see on here is the follow-up to the Golden Circle activity. So one of our teammates, can you guys see that? It switched screens, so can you see the Golden Circle? Okay.
Yep.
So we took the work that was in our worksheets from the SPDIG National Conference, and one of our teammates, Crystal Bethay, actually put it on a pretty circle for us. And so you can see that we've taken those same initiatives and kind of outlined them in the what. So those big things that we need to make sure, what are the things that we're looking at, and then really getting people to stop focusing on their individual silos of their what and bring it into the how are we doing that and why are we doing that, in order to help drive these conversations around systems alignment so that we don't go back to working in silos. We've done a good job of staying out of them for the last couple of years, but we certainly don't want to go back there. So we definitely want to use that visual to help support the work moving forward. Hopefully that my screen switched back over to my notes. Yes?
Yes.
On
Okay,
your notes.
perfect. Thank you. And then we've also attached here our SPDIG logic model, which shows our inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, and impacts. And then we've sort of additionally connected our theory of change to that as well. So by building capacity within the SEA regional implementation teams, district teams, and ensuring that we're promoting the quality of implementation, then we will impact student learning. So you can see that in our inputs, we've listed some of those same initiatives that inform our work and the content that we create as far as modules for the state of Arkansas and that kind of thing. So we will need to update our inputs because, as we just mentioned, we listed a lot of other things that are really driving conversations right now. And then we've also added a slide that we've used in order to highlight our work around how ESSEP and SPDIG are connected so that we can really have a conversation with all of our SEA team prior to taking the state capacity assessment this year to say, here is, because we need to do a better job of marketing ourselves, right? Sometimes people understand what SPDIG is or that that's got something to do with RTI, but when we ask them what is ESSEP, they cannot always articulate that. As a matter of fact, they can rarely articulate that. So we created this in order to really show the correlation between those two major hitters in our state. And then we've actually listed our SEA scores from last year, and then the newest scores, which would be the ESSEP infrastructure tool scores, in order to show where we are within the implementation of our ESSEP as well. And then the very last thing, the last thing that I want to show you guys is that in the state of Arkansas, we focused a lot around academics, and of course that's part of our SIMMER within our ESSEP, but behavioral supports have become kind of this monster about, we have all of these behavioral supports all around the state, and so our RTI advisory committee has recommended that we try to create an infographic for the continuum of behavior supports in the state of Arkansas. And so the last thing that you see here are lots of initiatives listed in a multi-tiered support. This is a draft, and I'm going to pause and let Jeff talk about this.
So one of our main strategies in our state systemic improvement plan is to align and coordinate existing resources and systems and initiatives for students with disabilities around literacy and behavior. Though our main focus is literacy, the behavior aspect has only grown as a result of some needs that are out there in our state, and I would imagine yours as well, where we are seeing increasing referrals for behavior, even in the kindergarten grades. In fact, our numbers are escalating from the pre-K to kindergarten transition. And so we have felt this strong need to get ahead of some of the issues that we're seeing with referrals to our most significant needs with behavior. That would be reflected up in the top of that triangle. And realizing that until we address through the tiered support the core needs and really look at certainly tier 1 and tier 2 and what are we doing as an agency and as to really support the behavioral needs that are out there. And so part of our SPDIG is heavily focused on PBIS installation, and that's going quite well. But we had mental health sort of siloed doing something, and we had this top-tiered, very expert level behavior support team that was doing a lot of student-specific work. And then you'll see in the tiers below that in tier 1, we had some social emotional, family community engagement, school counseling kind of operating somewhat in silos. And so in response to our state systemic plan and to the increasing requests that we're getting from LEAs around support for behavior, we have embarked on this journey to really provide a one-page infographic that we intend to hyperlink all these resources to, but then to have a lot of collaborative conversations with each of these groups around making sure that when a student presents with tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3 behavior needs, that we can easily show an LEA how to find the support from our agency in meeting those needs, and that they can access that and have information at their fingertips with how to go about that process. And so that's where we are currently, and we have had a lot of positive feedback on that from our upper leadership, and I think they too are getting a lot of conversations from superintendents and LEAs around the needs for behavior. And so we have used that need to really leverage the ESIP and SPDIG and the work around that to kind of display the work that has been going on for years. And I think it's been very positive to really show the positive outcomes of this infrastructure that we have been building and working towards. And we sort of get this influx of needs around behavior, and we were sort of poised and primed and ready to display for upper leadership some of the fruits of this labor. And so we've had some, what I would think really recent successes, even post SPDIG National Conference as it pertains to behavior. So we're hoping to continue that momentum.
And then the last thing that I wanted to say is that we have done a lot of work around initiative alignment. And when we approach the state capacity assessment this time, the state capacity in itself can often seem like a clunky event because everyone across the agency doesn't speak in the same vocabulary set that we might use during the administration of that assessment. And so what we don't want to do is also approach it as, while we're at it, we're going to do systems alignment work. So we're hoping that the conversation just naturally leads to the systems alignment piece, and it becomes a reality that we need to go back and revisit that information. So it might be that we reach out for ideas on how to facilitate or pose questions in order to sort of lead the conversation there, although we do actually think that it will naturally occur. And I'm going to stop rambling and stop sharing now.
I'll come down there. Bye.
Sorry, I have some background noise. I am going to stop sharing and stop rambling now. Thank you so much for the opportunity to let us share our work first today.
Oh no, I'm so glad you were able to. So they have a conference today, and so they stepped out. The Arkansas team did. But thank you so much, Jeff and Tia. And I see there was a comment from Rory that said, "Go Arkansas, nice anchor statement that is understandable and useful." And from Chris Perry, very impressive alignment that you have brought into your work. It seems that the more existing initiatives you can connect to your SIG, the more stable, sustainable it becomes long term as well. And people are agreeing how impressive it is. So, Rory, did you have some comments or connections you wanted to help us make based on Arkansas's efforts?
Yeah, that's such great work. I don't know if Tia and Jeff are still on. It sounds like maybe they had to dash back to their conference. A sign of their commitment and the ability of every single one of the people on this call to multitask in all sorts of crazy and amazing ways. I think, yeah, there was a lot of really key content there. And oh, thanks, Tia. And I'd say that I agree with Chris about this sustainability piece. Some of what I heard that maybe was just incidental, and I saw actually when Tia shared the screen, and I was looking at it, must have been a Google Doc, and it said Matt Sewell has made changes to this document since you've been a part of it. And I think one of the things that I would call out is that there's a really nice connection to leadership, and I think Tia and Jeff have facilitated and supported that. You know, the more that you can get people of authority and influence to converge around a common set of problems and understandings about pursuing solutions, the more likely you are to have the resources allocated to be able to sustain and support the attempts to test new change ideas, grow them and improve them and sustain them over time through the principles of implementation science. So I think there was a lot there that we can take away. I think one of the things that was also super useful is just they did what I was encouraging folks to do at the conference, which is to get very concrete and very tangible, right? So some of this alignment conversation sometimes stays at a very high conceptual level, and the more you can get really into the weeds in terms of thinking specific initiatives, specific data to share, specific resource opportunities to leverage, I think that the more likely you are to get to success in a meaningful way with alignment efforts.
Great. Yeah, I completely agree that it's just there's a lot of sense making going on, right? So someone could step into the SCA right now, go to maybe the all-day meeting that they're planning, and really understand. You know, there are all these efforts going on. This is how it's serving kids, and this is how it can work together. So I think making it coherent for people is pretty critical, especially because we have a lot of SCA turnover. You know, and certainly you're going to have to tell your story to districts and to schools and to regional providers, as Tia was saying before the call started. And the better you can bring it into that one picture, like the pyramid they were showing, the better off you're going to be. That elevator speech gets a lot easier, or that, you know, the meeting with the superintendent's group gets easier, et cetera. And as we were saying, those are some leaders that you need to get on board.
Yeah, Jennifer, this is Rory. I just lean into that to say one thing that sparked that you said that sparked my thinking, which is I think this piece about accessible and understandable language is really important. Probably everyone on the call understands and knows from personal experience kind of sometimes how wonky education language can get, and especially special education language. Boy, we really like our acronyms and our lofty words, and those matter. I think, though, that some of the systems alignment considerations that can support it, this seems funny and it seems simplistic, but it's more important than it sounds, is to use other people's language and or to use language that's very accessible. So I think, you know, if you're having a conversation with district superintendents, find out what language the district superintendent or superintendents are using to talk about their priorities. You know, one thing that I just know from personal experience, having been both a state special education director and a state superintendent, is that, you know, people don't want things to turn into, you know, oh, that's the special ed project, right? And so the more we can anchor our kind of thinking in language when we're trying to talk to general ed peers and cross-system supports, the more we can use language that's commonly defined and understood, the more likely we are for people to understand what that connection is to teaching and learning in some of the ways that Tia and Jeff were talking about.
Great, that is a great point. And No, we have some various teams that have done work since the national meeting on their systems alignment efforts. And so Ginger Henry from Missouri is on. And Ginger, can you hear me? Or sorry, can you? I can't hear you yet, so I'm not sure if it's on mute. I heard her earlier. So why don't we, Carrie, does this time work for you to share? Yeah,
Sure.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So first I want to give a appreciation to Jeff and Tia for sharing their work that they've done, because for me, it was really important, because we're actually are encountering, struggling with some of the same things about, how do you convey the things that you've done historically in a way that's that is helpful, and sharing those experiences without appearing entrenched in the past. And I think the graphics they have are really helpful for that, and as a tool for that. So that's something that we struggle with being able to do real adequately. So we had a great discussion in DC, our team that was there, and that we were able to work through part of the alignment tool that we had. We didn't get through the entire thing, and give a shout out for our Cherie Blanchett, who was able to capture many of the notes, and I think she might be on the line. And I saw that Chris Perry, if it's the Chris Perry from Kansas, is on the line too.
Hi, Carrie.
So,
thanks for calling me out there.
So he may be able to, you could add something in a moment here, because this allowed us to really look at how are we making connections and doing a more dissection of that work. And I really like the questions because they lead into that. It's helped us, we utilize the work we're doing is this professional development system we're working on building is new for us. So it's around school mental health and integrating that into our Kansas MTSS and alignment framework. So everything from the foundation of that, also through the training and curriculum. So so it's a process for us, and so we've been able to and always are really conscious about trying to remain cohesive across not just with the MTSS and alignment work, but then also with our work as a whole in terms of our technical assistance system, and as well as our evaluation, because this touches, school mental health touches a lot of areas, and we have a lot of different access points for it, and that also becomes part of the challenge. So the cross-system training, the facilitation that occurs, and the coaching that has to be done to establish alignment across the districts and the community systems is challenging. But then that has also, the team that's doing this work has also enabled them to also leverage resources for that. So they have worked on taking that systems alignment worksheet that you have and how putting it into a Google Doc so that the School Mental Health Initiative team can work through it together and make additional connections. And so the School Mental Health Initiative team is basically our state trainers of our district coaches around the school mental health work. So they're working in different areas of the state and have produced some kind of, I think, some really good examples of how this work is similar but yet different in that some of the accommodations we've needed to make from previous work that we've done. And Shri, if you're on.
Yes.
And yeah, so Shri, one of the things, if you would talk about a little bit about how you identified this work as being more like a spiral tiered model process of having to develop the training, the collaborative processes, the resources, whereas before we were able to do it more segmented, but this is different because of the, it's a different, a group of people and just a different.
Correct. So we've been supporting our teams across tiers, but of course, initially focusing. Hopefully, you guys aren't getting kickback there. Is anyone else getting that? Okay.
Yeah. So if you're not Cherie, if you could please mute your phone/computer right now so that we don't get feedback while she's speaking. Thank you.
Okay. So this is Cherie talking. Okay, so yeah, we've been able to support our teams across tiers, but have an initial focus, of course, on our students that are most at risk and shared across systems, specifically our districts and our community mental health centers. And part of the reason for that has been that our community mental health centers really are funded to work in that area. And we have found that work to be, while very complicated, also very rewarding. In fact, we had 2 district community, we call them our district community leadership teams, because those teams consist of leadership from both the district and the community mental health center. What's really exciting, Carrie was talking about the importance of alignment within our Kansas MTSS framework and our other education initiatives going on, but we've also done a great deal of work to align with other initiatives going on. For example, we have a legislated school mental health pilot program. One of the exciting outcomes for us is that in one of the teams that we were supporting last year, and we say regions because our community mental health centers, well, you guys know how complicated it is for a district to build internal capacity and then have that sustainability and fidelity and replicability. When you're doing that work across systems, if you're a community mental health center, you support not just, several buildings, but you support several districts. And one of the teams that we were supporting last year, one of our exemplars that was just doing phenomenal, we actually lost 3 key people. They had gone, transferred out of the district and gone to some other school districts. And what was really exciting was that that work was not lost because we had actually trained our community mental health center in that MTSS and alignment framework and practices. And now that there's new staff in those roles within the district, the community mental health center, it wasn't like we were starting all over again in providing that training and coaching. So lots of ongoing training and coaching. They've really been informing our work as far as the resources that they need. This morning, just coming fresh off my mind, and I think Amy Wells is on the phone. I wish I could have recorded that meeting and shared it with everybody as they were talking about incorporating trauma responsive practices within their functional behavior assessment process. And they were wanting to replicate that training. They again recognized the need to not train just district staff, but additionally, at the same time, train their community mental health center staff so that there was alignment across systems as far as understanding and practices go. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in here or if Carrie, if that captured kind of what you were speaking to, but it's been pretty exciting.
Carrie, you might be on mute.
Well, yes, you would be correct. The looking at utilizing the, like, continuing this conversation. And so we kind of have, I guess we have levels of it, application within our SCA and technical assistance system. Because I think this is also a way to help others who aren't involved in this work as deeply as certainly Cherie and Chris and Amy are. But, you know, I'm a little more closer to it, but others really are invested in this work. But this, I think being able to have some of this captured helps explain the complexity of it, but at the same time that it can be figured out, and that this is some of the conversations that we need to have and work through is really helpful for that. And then that the team themselves will be looking at working through it. So ours is kind of a work in progress with that. They have it in a Google Doc, or going to have it in a Google Doc that then different folks of us can have access to, and we can refer back to it. Is there anything else you'd like to know?
Well, let's see. Let's open it up for questions.
This is Rory. I don't have a question, but I will say, and I guess I'm curious to know if others are doing this as well. And then it looks like Tom Delaney has a question in the chat. But, you know, Carrie and Cherie, one of the things that I heard that I think is really great is that you're using technology to create opportunities for asynchronous collaboration around this alignment conversation, right? So you've moved this Word document into a Google Doc. You've created a norm for collaboration with your interagency peers, not only within agency, but interagency. Around the mental health and community health space, so that you guys can have an ongoing dialogue about these questions. So you're concretizing the thinking in a way, but using technology, which I think is really smart, so that people can feed into this dialogue as time and space allows. And then I'm guessing you guys are coming together to kind of synthesize and coalesce around information. I just think that that's a new piece that we hadn't heard about before from the Arkansas work. And I think that that's really terrific. One of the things I heard too, in a similar kind of way to Arkansas, is that you're coalescing around this issue. Cherie was talking about the most at-risk students and where your shared concerns are. And again, part of what we talked about a couple weeks ago at the conference was starting with that notion of who cares about this problem and why, and finding that connective tissue around a concern and a sense of urgency that you have can be really motivational to do the deep and heavy lifting on the alignment work. So I think those were a couple of nuances that were really cool. And then Jennifer, you've got some chats coming in.
Right, we have from Tom Delaney. Does the involvement of community mental health centers help you bring your SPDIG project to the table with your state mental health agency? And are you thinking of using the template for the conversation?
This is Cherie again. I'll jump in here. Yes, absolutely. The work that we're doing has helped with those conversations with our mental health agencies. And actually, it's some of those conversations were taking place prior to the SPDIG, and the SPDIG has really helped us to move those conversations forward, so that it's not just talk, but now action as well. As far as the SPDIG, the one document that we've been pulling in and just talking about all the different initiatives that we're in alignment with, and how is really has been just an activity for our team to further validate or ensure that we're in alignment. When we first started our work, we did a crosswalk with all of the pieces that we were pulling in with our Kansas MTSS and alignment team and our our Kansas Educational System accreditation, and some of those things. As far as those shared resources, each of our district community leadership teams, so again, our district and our community mental health center, have a shared drive where they share their resources, and we are working from what's called an implementation guide. So they document their progress from utilizing those implementation science phases, and so that's been really great as well. And then where we're a couple of the areas that we are currently trying to tackle and are pretty challenging is really how we specifically document the progress of student outcomes that are shared across systems. And the reason for that being that districts collect, a certain subset of data, and our community mental health centers collect another set of data. And then of course you've got HIPAA and FERPA that complicate it. So one of the things we're looking at too is, how can we have a HIPAA compliant, FERPA compliant database for them to be able not just to share resources that aren't specific to a student, but to truly document the progress of those students that are shared across systems. Let me see if I answered that question. Are you thinking of using the template for the conversation? Meaning to share it with this group? I might need to check for understanding on that question.
I think that was in, and Tom might want to use his phone, but I think it was in relation to that conversation with the state mental health agency. That's how I read it. But Tom, am I getting that wrong?
No, that's correct. The conversation with other state agencies is kind of what I had in mind. So before I use it, has anyone else tried doing that, and did it work, or should I avoid doing that? That's a little joke there.
Gotcha. Well, as far as other state agencies go, I can tell you that we have in one of our district community leadership teams, juvenile justice and foster care are at the table, and utilizing, yes, the process, again, our implementation guide, to walk through the process of aligning practices and leveraging resources across each agency and group. And right now, so this is really, we're going into our second year of being on the ground with teams, and they are helping us to refine exactly what that looks like every step of the way. And so the implementation guide is just one example of one of the templates that's being used and refined. I don't know if anyone's on that was able to attend the session on trauma responsive student support plans. But that is an example of another template that's been developed by some of our state level experts, and is literally being informed and adapted by our teams who are working to implement those practices.
And Cherie, I think part of the significance of that work is that for the first time I can remember, that we actually will have foster care, juvenile justice, our mental health center providers, and our school staff monitoring progress of a student using from the same page, literally.
Yeah, that's huge. You, I'm sure, are all familiar with the story of the district has one plan, the community mental health center has another plan. Sometimes even within a building, you might have some IEP goals that don't even align with the behavior intervention plan. And sometimes those interventions across the district and the community mental health center aren't even in alignment. One of our recent workshops to support all 4 of our district community leaderships at the same time was that trauma responsive student support plan workshop. They were so excited to be able to collaborate around students or around a child that they all share, and that you know, when they were at the tables together, you know, identifying that yes, they actually do have, you know, they were able to refine, I believe, you know, the support that they want in place for that student, but then build off of, you know, what is juvenile justice, you know, ironically in this one team, it was juvenile justice that I believe had the closest relationship with the parent. And so as they even broke up tasks around who's doing, you know, what to support the student, we're able to give each other ideas about what's working, what's not working, and then leverage the resources that each agency has and is utilizing to support the student to make it more effective. And then again, I think, you know, for us, the real challenge, and I don't know that, I think I started to geek out on this when we were in DC, but to see there is actually a significant amount of data that's being collected, but no authentic cross-system progress monitoring for, are we talking about the same thing? Are we seeing progress? Is what we're doing working? If we've got four, two, much less 4+ different agencies working to support a student, and we don't even know how to interpret each other's data, much less, you know, are coming and looking at it together. That's a lot of time and resources that may or may not be proving to do anything. So it's been very exciting, with the challenge being how do we, you know, we all love data, but how do we make sure that we're talking about the same thing and monitoring those same progress points to demonstrate that those outcomes are being had.
And from a systems perspective, I think the value in it is that this is how this will help us say, this is why this is so important, that we now have an example of going from something to this that occurred because of that local collaboration. Not, I want to say in spite of the larger state system above it, but you were able to figure it out. And so I think it then puts more impetus on the state system policy level to align and figure it out as well.
Yes, we're looking forward to that. And that actually came up in the meeting this morning of, you know, making sure that we are sharing with our state level stakeholders, ones that have, you know, authority to help us influence change, because there are some of those barriers, like, you know, making sure that we are respecting HIPAA and FERPA. Those things are in place for a solid reason, while also at the same time identifying that, you know, gosh, where can we share our data and progress monitor? What is a safe, you know, online, you know, database? And there are some examples of some communities that are doing that. Here, you know, I should say counties here in Kansas, but trying to figure out how to replicate that, because of course there's money and things like that involved. So we're always trying to brainstorm or identify other ways to do that. And I'm hopeful that that's where our state level stakeholders will be able to help us. One of the other things that's exciting, again, maybe I said it and I'll stop after this, is, you know, our team is multidisciplinary, meaning that yes, we are working to enhance mental health practices within our Kansas MTSS and alignment framework, but we're multidisciplinary because we believe that it is, you know, mental health is the responsibility of all. And that's proven to be really smart in this case. So for example, and again, just thinking about this meeting this morning, you know, behaviorism, we've got, you know, functional behavior assessments, while at the same time, recognizing or, a huge acknowledgement to the adverse childhood experiences study and what we know about the science behind that and the importance of, biological regulation, et cetera, and some of those things that aren't accounted for in our traditional practices. It has been by pulling together cross-disciplinary teams, so people with a behavior background as well as a mental health background, that I think have really helped us to incorporate current research and build on practices that are effective. And I don't know that we could have done that without leveraging the different backgrounds and experiences of others.
This is Rory. I'll say it's so impressive, and it's wonderful to hear what the work really looks like in states and on the ground. So thank you so much for sharing these really important examples. One of the things, I think it was Shri who was talking, one of the things that you said that made me just have one thing to share is you were talking about, data and different data points and collections. And, one of the things that can really be a barrier, excuse me, to systems alignment and collaboration within agencies, across programs and across agencies, is the nuances we bring to the data collection efforts. And I don't really know that we got deeply into this a few weeks ago, but one of the things to think about is what data you are collecting for your program, in this case SPDIG, and what data other programs or initiatives or agencies are collecting with regard to a similar or shared problem, and how different does your data collection really need to be? Like sometimes we create more barriers for ourselves by bringing so much nuance to our data collection efforts that it becomes overwhelming. And so some cases that nuance has to exist, but in some cases it doesn't need to exist. And so where can we be streamlining the data we collect, the ways in which we collect it for shared understanding and shared use is just something to think about. The other thing I'd say too is that, this template, we specifically shared it in Word for a couple reasons. One, in case you wanted to, use it for this purpose around your SPDIG to type into. But two, you should feel fully empowered to take this template and modify it for your own use for conversations about alignment above and beyond the SPDIG alignment or in ways that you want to expand upon it. So, NCSI is a federally funded TA center. You can use this as a launching point for anything that you want to create. And so if there are other initiatives with which you want to use this worksheet for supporting a systems alignment conversation, go for it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Kansas team. It was great to hear where you're at right now, and you are really in the midst of it, mixing it up, and it was nice to see how that connected with some of the efforts Minnesota is up to. And I'm going to see if Tom or Lorraine from Minnesota SPDIG have anything else that they wanted to talk about from their team's efforts after the SPDIG national meeting.
Well, this is Tom. I can jump in real quick. If you're following the chat area, the short version is one of our SPDG goals is to improve graduation rates for American Indian and Black students with disabilities, which are the two student subgroups who had the largest gaps in comparison to all other students in our state. And interestingly, as we've progressed on implementing Check and Connect as an evidence-based practice to improve those graduation rates in 4 districts with high concentrations of those students, it's always been a question of how does this interface with transition planning for the students, which, we are a begin planning by age 14 state. So that should be working as well as a graduation support. And we also recognize the huge difference that graduation makes as a determinant for a lot of things related to quality of life after high school. So we have some natural linkages with vocational rehabilitation services through our Department of Employment and Economic Development, and disability services through our Department of Human Services and through our county system. We've never had yet, though, and maybe it just takes years to get there, the conversation of how is our SPDG work with its graduation support built into it aligned with what should be happening for these kids in terms of transition planning, pre-employment transition services, and for some kids, disability services through the county too. So I'm really excited to see the template and appreciate too that it can be adapted for whatever the conversation needs to be, because we do have an important conversation here in Minnesota to have around what's the combined picture for graduation supports for these kids. What are we doing between 3 state agencies to make it something that's actually implementable at the local level by people who don't just come from schools, but come from county offices as well. So I'm looking forward to using this tool for that conversation. And I think that it's going to be a very good clarifier. And I'll stop there. Thank you everyone for the opportunity to share that with you.
Thanks, Tom. Any questions or ideas about what Tom had to say from the group? And Rory, did you have any thoughts that spurred on for you?
Nothing additional at this time.
Sounds good. And Lorraine, are you on the call? All right. Well, thank you very much, Tom. And we also, I wanted to ask again, Ginger, are you on the line?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you sound great. I knew you were there. I could see you. I just couldn't hear you.
I couldn't get it to come through. So anyway,
That's
welcome.
perfect.
Hello, everyone. Just kind of briefly, we have been working toward alignment for many years. In fact, 3 SPDGs now, and very grateful that we have been able to do that. We've learned many lessons along the way. We started back over 10 years ago, I guess, with the Missouri integrated model. That was one of our SPDG work, and we learned fairly quickly that we had kind of bitten off more than we could chew. While everyone came to the table talking about integrating the initiatives, it just didn't work. There's too much territorial issues, and it was just very hard to align them. So as we moved forward, we realized that we were going to have to kind of roll back a bit and focus maybe at the building level to get things off the ground. So we called our work the collaborative work, and we focused on John Hattie's work, and we focused with building leadership teams and bringing 4 to 5 foundational practices at the universal level. And we did see a lot of success with that. However, we still had the issues with trying to bring together the consultants that were doing our work in the field, doing the trainings and the coachings to really see where the work was headed. We had the issue with this is a special education project, and so we really, really worked and focused to bring in consultants from different areas of the different initiatives, and we came back to the table and kind of worked through how we could blend and move forward. And then I'm not going to say it was easy because it still continued, and we moved into what we called the Missouri Model District, and now the District Continuous Improvement work that went to the district level, because we soon found that you can't reach enough if you're just working within certain buildings within a district, that we needed a district focus and that they needed to communicate that with their buildings. So as we moved forward with that, we found that we were beginning to get more support here at the agency. And in fact, our agency has adopted our work and into the 5 pillars that are our strategic plan, which include leadership, collaborative climate and culture, effective teaching and learning practices, database decision-making, and alignment of standards, curriculum, and assessment. and I'm talking way too fast and there's too much to say, but as we have moved forward with this, we have used our staff in the field and at our 9 regional centers to provide the training and the coaching to our districts. And since we have aligned the PLC with the actual district continuous improvement work, and now we have added the behavior component this year with our PBS group, and we have a pilot of districts that are doing PBS and joining the academic piece together as we move forward. We are hoping that we can grow that in the next year or so. We started with 21 districts in a cohort, and now we have about a third of the state, about 154 districts that are doing the work, that are in some place in implementation of the work. It's a continuous road.
Ginger, this is Rory. I'd say, boy, I know what you mean from past experience about biting off more than you can chew. So thank you for sticking with it. And I'd say too that I think you're smart to layer these things in kind of systematically, right? So you did some work and now you're bringing a new element in. You did some work and then you brought a new element in. I think that's a strategic approach so that you don't get overwhelmed or lost in the middle.
Well, that is very true. And I will say too, as we have moved forward to bring the entire agency here together, it was very valuable when we attended one of the meetings, NCSI meetings, and Joanne Cashman presented, and we brought Joanne and her crew in, and they were able to do the values framework piece for us.
The values creation framework that comes from Wenger and Trainer, yep.
Yes, and that helped us show the rest of the people within our agency where we were headed and you know what the general thought was, and that has been great. We appreciated all that work as well.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you so much, Ginger, for sharing. And did anyone have any questions for Ginger about the Missouri effort? Okay. Well, thank you, Ginger, again. And we also, I believe, have the Kentucky team on.
Hey, Jennifer, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, you're a little bit soft.
All righty. We've got Veronica
There.
Sullivan on here as well. It's our division director, heavily involved in this SPDIG. Thanks for giving us a chance to talk. You know, as I was listening to all this, I can't think of a better topic to really explore and think about as far as alignment. Because what hit me was we're really in a transformational stage right now in education. One of the things we were talking about in a meeting this morning was, one, we have so much turnover with staff. Two, there are always fiscal challenges. I don't know many departments that are actually growing with their budgets and adding, you know, sizable number of staff. And so trying to align our resources is just a logical step, but it's a necessary step that just continues to hit me as I'm listening to everyone speak. You know, we've got these issues of silos and territory and fiscal challenges and staffing turnover. You know, as we move forward, it just hits me that we just cannot not consider how we align all of our various projects together to be as efficient as possible. So anyway, that was just a thought that hit me as Tia was speaking, and the others here too. I'm not sure, I think Rory might have said this, kind of being careful as far as, you know, we operate in a conceptual world oftentimes, but we also need to really drill down and operate in a concrete world when we're dealing, especially with locals and things, and with the project, when we're dealing with, you know, outcomes that are measurable. So that hit me as well. So we're going to really talk more about, we have a PBS focus as far as an installation, what we're really trying to to move forward on. And we're using implementation science kind of as a lever to help us do that. But we've done some nice partnership, and we're starting to leverage that more with one of our with our monitoring division within the agency. And I'm going to let Veronica talk a little bit about that work as it continues to grow.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you
Sound
sound
good.
good.
Okay, great. So we actually went through a reorganization that's also helping to build to make the infrastructure available for us to move the SPDIG. It's almost like the stars were all aligned perfectly. It's been really great. But what we are doing is we do a consolidated monitoring process. And so to really try to push on results and to support our districts through that monitoring process, we're utilizing our SPDIG to go in and provide additional support to those districts who were monitored and received a corrective action plan, and we're monitoring for discipline and behavior practices within the district. So our SPDIG is supporting more of a sustainable change within those districts that are monitored, because I'm sure like other states, you'll see the same patterns. You give corrective action, you get that corrected a few years down the road, there's no sustainability of those changes. And so we really wanted to look at that and try to figure out how we could provide support and use our knowledge of implementation science from our state systemic improvement plan to apply those practices to create a sustainable system. What's exciting about the SPDIG work is that with our state systemic improvement plan, it was a very intensive model that we're using. And so with our SPDIG, we're really learning about how we can provide more of a targeted level of support. And so it's exciting, it's challenging, a lot of trial and learning, but we're doing that. And what also came about from that was that preschool had a completely separate behavioral support system than our K-12 system. And so we wanted to really align that. And so we had a second phase really of our SPDIG where we have our Link 2K project where we're bridging PBIS support from preschool and kindergarten because they were not aligned. And so that is really, we're at ground zero of building that system, but that all came about. So really, it's just been evolving as we look at data and as we look at needs of our districts at how we can align our system to support PBIS across the state.
Thoughts, comments?
Thank you, Veronica. And Mike, were you going to say something else?
No, I'm just going to say thoughts or comments on that.
This is Rory. Thanks, y'all. And thanks, Veronica. One of the things I was thinking about as you were talking is just it's smart to phase things in some of the ways that you were talking about. And one of the things that everybody, including Kentucky, might be thinking about, but also others, is, you know, as you test these alignment and you sort of test out your alignment endeavors, and you practice new change ideas together, you may want to think as you phase in new alignment elements, if being intentional about what I call a post-mortem, which maybe that sounds a little grim, but, you know, dissecting and analyzing purposefully as part of that process at the front end, like, okay, in our last alignment effort, what worked really well, what did not work so well, what are the lessons learned about how we're going to improve upon our own alignment intention with this next piece of the work, be that a phase or a new partner or a new whatever. You know, really that sort of thinking about that plan, do, study, act can happen at the micro level in terms of a specific change idea that you're trying to think about. It can also happen systemically. And I just would encourage this sort of intentional reflective analysis as you're moving from one phase of alignment to the next about what worked well and what was not so great and how you can improve based upon your own analysis.
Thank you for that feedback, Rory.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kentucky team. And Arizona. And if you're speaking, we may not be hearing you yet.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, you sound great.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, great. And can I share my screen also, Jennifer?
Absolutely. Let me stop sharing.
So while she's doing that, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's sharing so far. It's really great to hear how people have gone through different processes and come out on the other end. Because I feel like with our project, we started a brand new project with this particular SPDIG, so we've had a lot of learning and a lot of building as we've gone along. So I think, can you see my screen now? That has a Word document.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I just wanted to show, very similar to the other teams, we actually, Stacy Rico, who's on the call, she's our project coordinator, is brilliant with creating frameworks for us in our thinking. So we did the same thing. We talked through who our stakeholders are, what the initiatives are, how it aligns, collaboration notes, and next steps. And I would say we're still in that phase of trying to make the connections with people and with the work. We've had a lot of success within our own unit. That's where we started, within our own sphere of influence within Exceptional Student Services, and have been able to partner now with our program support monitoring folks who also coordinate our ESIP, and showing where the connections are and how the SPDIG fits into the ESIP. And just like was mentioned with Kentucky, we actually collaborated around a monitoring visit and using the SPDIG to support the corrective action plan of that particular site. So I think within our own department, we've had a lot of success that has grown, created some work groups, literacy initiatives work groups, so we could bring people together with shared, outcomes for their projects and their work. I would say we're still working with the other units within our department, and I think it was someone from Missouri who said you tried to bring everybody together, and it kind of it was very territorial. That was my experience last year, with an effort to kind of go directly at people and say, hey, let's collaborate, and then it was a no. And it's been a couple of more no's, like direct no's. So we said, okay, our strategy is persistence and friendliness, so that's not going to work. What will work? So we've been trying to, instead of directly trying to say, let's collaborate, we'll say, hey, we have a school we're working with, let's talk about that school, and here's what we're doing, and let's learn about what you're doing. So maybe there is not as effective, but it's kind of, we're trying to find the doors where they are, to bridge those different departments in the work that's being done, building up our own. I think we've been successful with building our own credibility and trust in the work that we do, and that this is not something different, that it really does align to many initiatives. And so we're talking about that within departments within our organization, but then also with some of the TA centers that we work with or have connections to. So it doesn't seem like, okay, the CEDAR work is different. No, high leverage practices are part of our project. Let's use that same language to tell people about our project. They'll see the connections, for example. So, we're still working at it hard, and trying to take those steps so people come together. I love the examples of where we can get to, because that's definitely what we want. And I think, Rory, thank you for the presentation. I think it was very useful to get really practical, because then we were able to sit down and say, okay, the actual steps to do that for us right now are these, versus sometimes it feels overwhelming when you don't get a positive response from other people, or you don't feel like you have agency support for that collaboration. To make it happen. So I know it can, and having some steps is like, okay, this is our next direction. This is where we're going to go next. So I think just in a nutshell, that's where we're at and what we've kind of learned. But if you have other tips for the door in your face situations, I'm open to that too. And Stacy, also feel free to chime in on anything else you think that would be helpful to share.
I'd like to say something about the door in the face.
Good.
What we found is we try to look for where there's a problem or where there's pain. And when people have a problem or they're really suffering from pain, they're really looking for help and a cure. And that's got us in the door a couple of times to help relieve their pain. And so just by kind of looking at it from that lens, it may open a door for you. I'm not saying it'll be an easy door, but when people are really in need, they're open to different ideas.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. That's a good point. It's sometimes, I think it goes to the point that we're all focused on our own work, and probably they are too, versus like stepping outside and maybe what you're saying before, Rory, about anchoring around a need, the students, right? It's not our own initiatives, but it's like, how are we meeting that need? So I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, I was also thinking about what Rory had said earlier about using somebody else's language, right? So you're figuring out need, you're figuring out the language they speak in already, they're comfortable with. And certainly when I think across ESSA and IDEA, we have pretty different language, especially since 2004 was when we were reauthorized for IDEA. And, just 2 years ago, ESSA was reauthorized. So, there's just even a difference in the contemporary aspect of the language, but figuring out the language people speak in, figuring out their needs, meeting them where they're at, working from there, giving a picture, and maybe sometimes an image of how it all fits together. So there was a lot of coherence, creation of coherence in what I was hearing from people. And Rory, what else were you thinking?
Oh, yes to all of that. And one of the things I was thinking, Tracy and Veronica, I can't remember who Kentucky was talking about this. It's strategic to nest these, I don't know what I guess I call discretionary or voluntary activities, right? Like SPDIG comes with resources, but it's not a mandate, and linking it up with monitoring things, right? So if there's a problem that has to be solved, like I think Tracy, you were talking about corrective action for a district, right? They have to solve that problem, and SPDIG is a resource to solve that problem. I think it gets a little bit into what I think it was Tom was saying. Well, maybe it wasn't Tom, I'm not sure, but about sort of like find the pain point and provide some therapy for it. I think that's a strategic way to go about this, right? Because you're trying to find an on-ramp, and there's lots of different on-ramps. And one of those is, okay, you have to do this, and we have a resource to help you. I think that's a nice sort of additional thing to just call it intentionally. You guys are already doing it. I think it's great, but thinking intentionally about that is probably something other states could benefit from too.
And Rory, this is Veronica. You had mentioned earlier on in the call about having leadership at the table, and one of the beauty pieces of us using the corrective action and the monitoring,
right,
is that the superintendent is involved.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, you've now found a problem that they have to solve. I mean, whether they want to or not, right? Hopefully they want to, but even if they don't want to, there's a bit of a mandate there that you can be sort of the knight on the white horse to be like, yes, you have this big, bog you've got to trot through, but look, we have resources to help you. So strategic.
And it breaks down the wall of this being just a special education.
Right.
So it really has worked out really well for us in Kentucky, I have to say that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Veronica. And the other thing I'd say too, just because I have the benefit of knowing a little bit more about the Arizona work, Tracy and Stacy, they've done incredible work, and they have demonstrable results. So one of the other things I think sometimes we forget to do, and is just demonstrate, like, look, this makes a difference. Like, this is a hard to improve population. We have systemically low performance, but here's a system that's working, and here's how this is available to you. And gosh, look at the return on, the work here. So I think using your data to demonstrate success is also something to think about. Like it's compelling to people to be like, oh wait, if I do this, that's going to happen. That's a good thing. Yeah, we're all committed to that same outcome.
And Rory, that got me thinking too. The SPDIGs have evaluators. Typically they're external. Every once in a while they're internal, but there are evaluators. And often those title programs, there's not an evaluator specific.
Right.
There's no critical friend that's helping you put together your data, make pretty displays. And so that if I'm doing one of those mandatory programs and you're coming in, and I would love to get a little help with that, if it works within the confines of your project. All right. Well, we have 5 more minutes. This has been a great conversation. Stacy and Tracy, thank you so much for sharing how you've been going about your systems alignment work since the conference, and just generally, Rory, it is invaluable to have your perspective on this, just your national understanding of what's going on, your understanding of improvement science and systems alignment, and how you can use improvement science to help your systems alignment, and just taking into consideration so many different aspects of what happens in states. And
Well,
states,
thank you very
for being
much.
willing to
Super
share.
fun for me. You guys are making me want to be a SPDIG director again, though.
Yep, I'm sure they would welcome you back. I don't know if Julie's on the line right now, but if she heard that, she would be very happy to have you back. All right, well, thank you, everyone. This has been a great session, and if anyone has thoughts about how we can continue to work together on this, there's no specific SIP SPDIG alignment community of practice at this point. That is going to be, I think it's evolved into an MTSS community of practice. And so if you have ideas about how we can work together as a group, maybe in our directors webinars or asynchronously, I would be very open to the thoughts that you have. So you can put them in the chat pod right now if you have an immediate thought, or you could email me. And I know Rory is still going to be available to us with ideas if we have questions for her going forward. But Rory, we appreciate your help. Thank you to all the states who presented their information. And everyone have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Rory. Bye.